Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast brought to you by our friends over at Briar-Greaves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. So whether it's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, Briar-Greaves Insurance are the best people in the business to work with. Visit briargreavesinsurance.com for more information or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. It is a Thursday edition of the Pewter Report podcast, our last one for the general public, if you will. We'll talk more about Friday's show a little bit later. But today, we are going to break down the Pro Football Focus rankings of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers players going into the 2025 season. This was actually done by our colleague, our pal, and our Pewter Report alumni, Trevor Sikkema, ranking the top players at each position. There's a fair amount of Bucs on it, but where do they rank on all of them? We're going to break it down, give our insight, talk about whether we agree or disagree, and get into some other Bucs topics as well. So I'm your host, Matt Matera, joined with me on today's Thursday show, the superstar of PewterReport.com. You've seen him interviewing Todd Bowles. You've seen him on ESPN, and he's back once again. It is our BA, Bailey Adams. Hello, Bailey. How we doing?
I'm doing well. I would fight back against the superstar moniker, but I appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on. As we mentioned, you were on Monday's show with Scott interviewing Todd Bowles. You look a little bit different now, though. I can't quite put my finger on it. No, I'm just joking. Bailey, you were a participant on Tuesday with the Bucs color and cut to fund the cure. You want to talk a little bit about that event and how it all went on?
Yeah, it was awesome to be a part of. I know they've been doing it. This was the 11th annual, and they were raising money for the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation, a long-standing partnership they've had. I think this year they said they took them up to $800,000 raised for them over the course of that partnership and of this event. It was awesome to be a part of. Got the hair's gone, really. It was red and orange for a couple hours that day until I was a little itchy, so I came home, took a shower, and just watched all of it just come off very, very quickly and just flood my my bathtub with red and orange. But actually kind of made some pink liquid.
When it mixed together.
Okay. Yeah. But awesome to be a part of, and it was just really cool kind of getting to see some of the kids out there, obviously getting a distraction from some real tough things they're going through. And the little girl I think her name was Isabella, the little girl that was spray painting my hair and painting my beard, was having a great time. I saw she was all over the place with the spray paint on Mike Allstott's head. I think she was the one painting Todd Bowles' beard and got him up on his face at one point. So it was a real fun time.
Yeah, it was a super cool event. It was the 11th year the Bucs have done this to raise money for the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation. So I was taking photo and video of you getting your hair cut. So you're a trooper for participating in that. And we saw Baker Mayfield get his hair dyed, and Antoine Winfield Jr. and a number of different people. And Bailey put out a video on our YouTube channel as well. He worked very hard on it. So please go and check it out. Give it a like too. But shout out to you, Bailey. Shout out to the Bucs for an excellent cause and raising a lot of money for a very serious thing. Before we get into these rankings as well, a little bit of other news that went on. This one was kind of pretty recent, but Jenna Lane had posted a video that I believe was posted by the trainer of Hassan Reddick working out, getting ready for OTAs, and will be at mandatory minicamp next week. So maybe it's not as big of a deal as we thought about, Bailey.
I don't think anybody would have any sort of hesitation or anything scared about it if it weren't for Randy Gregory last season. Obviously, same position. Randy Gregory was a no-show all throughout the offseason, and I think some people are a little stung about that. But obviously listening to Todd Bowles on Monday, and he said repeatedly, all of this is voluntary, and next week they'll see him next week. They know where he is. Obviously, Larry Foote's been in contact with him, and based on that one video, I know it was a short video, but looking pretty explosive, and I know they're really excited about the mindset that he's in.
Yeah, super pumped to see him in a Bucs helmet and uniform. And you're right. I mentioned this yesterday, but it's not the perfect storm. It's the worst storm possible, but it's the perfect storm of the Randy Gregory situation last year with the Bucs and then everything that happened with Hassan Reddick and the Jets and sitting out. So when you add those two together, plus you mix in like not a lot of news going on at this point, as we get pretty much this, like July is officially the off season where it's like there's no draft coverage, there's no free agency coverage, and there's not practices after mandatory minicamp next week. So really only so many things that are going on. So publications got to find something to talk about. And that's
PFF lists.
Yeah. Things like that, like today, one last bit of news. It doesn't really impact the Bucs a ton, but legitimately, like 20 minutes ago, it was announced that Aaron Rodgers is signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it doesn't impact the Bucs unless they go and play the Steelers in the Super Bowl, which I guess that's only an issue to have once the Bucs are in the Super Bowl. But with the joint practices that Todd Bowles announced on the Pewter Report podcast, the Bucs presumably will be facing Aaron Rodgers once again in joint training camp, which the last time the Bucs saw Aaron Rodgers was also in joint training camp with the Bucs Jets, but this time it's Bucs Steelers. So, a little bit of extra news. I think it'll help with the headlines as well. If, God willing, a Bucs defensive back gets an interception off of Aaron Rodgers, that'll create a couple more headlines too.
Yeah, I think it sounds a little bit better that saying that rather than somebody so-and-so picked off Mason Rudolph or somebody like that. So it does add a new level of intrigue to that week of practices for the Bucs.
Yes, it does. So let's get into these lists today. Again, shout out to Pro Football Focus. Shout out to Trevor Sikkema for coming up this list with the overall. He ranks all 32 starters going into the 2025 NFL season. So, with a quarterback position, it's certainly a little bit different because there's only one starter where, offensive tackle there, there's two starting offensive tackles, and same with defensive tackle and things of that nature. So we're going to break it down, give some of our thoughts, opinions, whether we think it's a right ranking or a wrong ranking. So feel free. We'll answer some comments as well. Answer super chats, of course. So we'll start it off with Baker Reagan Mayfield. I believe that's his middle name. Reagan. Also, I loved, I don't know if you saw it, but the Bucs social media team was asking, because tonight is the first game of the NBA Finals, and they asked a couple people like, "Oh, who's going to win, the Thunder or the Pacers?" And the first two people they asked was Baker and Sterling Shepard, and it's like, well, who do you think they're going to take? Oklahoma City, where they happen to play college football in Oklahoma. But anyway, that was a funny video. I would recommend going to check it out. Anyway, so with this quarterback ranking, top 32, Baker Mayfield is ranked 13th out of 32 starting quarterbacks. Trevor goes on to say, Mayfield has pulled off a remarkable career turnaround. After bouncing back in 2023, he delivered the best season of his career in 2024, earning an 85.9 overall grade. He'll now be working with his third offensive coordinator in 3 years in Tampa Bay. Of course, that'll be Josh Grizzard, and his fifth since 2022. But the struggles of 2021 and 22 feel firmly in the rearview mirror. His 2024 campaign also featured one of the wildest plays of the season, completing a pass with one of the league's top pass rushers draped all over him. That, of course, was against the 49ers with Nick Bosa. And as great as of a play that was, Bailey, that still pisses me off because they didn't win the game. I hate when there's like a great highlight, and I get it. ESPN, which you've been on, and all these other publications, like they have to fill in highlights here and there. And that was an awesome play by Baker. But I always hate it when it's like, they ended up losing that game. But quarterbacks in front of Baker Mayfield, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, Jaden Daniels, and, of course, the top four quarterbacks that we talked about in the league. But Bailey, at 13, I feel that's kind of high for Baker Mayfield. But what do you think about it?
I feel like it's more or less pretty fair given what we've seen the last two seasons out of him. It's funny. You and I had this conversation on Tuesday at practice, and then I was talking about it yesterday when I was with Jay Retcher on his podcast. And statistically, when you look at what Baker Mayfield has done over the last couple seasons, like he's on pace over like with this season and next to be up there among the Bucs' best quarterbacks ever statistically. And
yes,
I think, back-to-back 4,000-yard seasons, back-to-back Pro Bowl seasons, albeit obviously with the replacements and all that. But I think what's funny is when you look at this ranking, it's He's behind Geno Smith, which I think you could argue against, but he's also ahead of C.J. Stroud, which I think if you're a Texans fan or if you're looking at it objectively, you could say that maybe is a little bit surprising that he's ahead of C.J. Stroud. He's also ahead of Kyler. He's ahead of Tua, Dak Prescott. So I think there are definitely some guys that he's notably ahead of, as well as one or two that you could argue he shouldn't be behind.
Yeah, and I'm just curious about if they just base it off of just last season, or is it kind of like an entire body of work? Because, in what Trevor wrote about Baker, he goes back to Baker's 2021 and 2022 season. My biggest gripe on this whole list, like if you want to put Jordan Love in front of him, fine. Brock Purdy, I think Baker has a case to be ahead of him. But maybe it's just me, but I am sick and freaking tired of the love fest for Justin Herbert. Everybody's like, oh, he's got the greatest arm of all time. And, oh, he's got all this amazing talent. And then he goes into big games and chokes worse than the New York Knicks against the Pacers in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, what did he blow? 100-point lead against the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence a couple of years ago, and then played like absolute garbage last season when he made the postseason. You know what? Every single quarterback that got drafted in the first round has incredible talent. Jamar Russell could throw the ball 100 yards from his knee, from a knee. That doesn't make him a good quarterback. And I'm not here saying Justin Herbert sucks as a quarterback. But I'm sick and tired of oh my God, his potential is incredible. If that was the case, Trevor Lawrence would be number 2 on this list. I'm just tired of go out and prove it. And, maybe this is the year where he's got a couple of more weapons and stuff on offense. And you got a quarterback type of coach with Jim Harbaugh. But, man, I'm just so tired of Justin Herbert. Maybe it's just me, but come on, man. Show me a little bit more than just, oh, he's got an amazing arm, Justin Herbert. Oh, you're so amazing. Because other guys are proving it way more than him.
Yeah, I like Herbert, and I get what you're saying, and I think it's kind of he's been one of those weird quarterbacks. Where there's quite a few of them, I guess, these days with just social media and everything, where certain narratives are out there about them, and you either feel really strongly one way or the other, and there's seemingly no middle ground. I feel like with him, there should be more middle ground than there is, but I think I mean, obviously the talent's there, and he's flashed that at times. I know he hasn't always had the best cast around him, but yeah, maybe this is that year for him. And what kind of confused me, and I don't know if actually maybe confused isn't the right word, but the way that this quarterback list, and they didn't do this with all of the rankings this year, but some of these lists have tiers to them. And with the quarterback one, Baker was under tier 3B, which was a headline, solid starters, but they need more help. I don't feel like that applies to Baker unless you're talking about, he's on his 3rd coordinator in 3 years.
Yeah, how else could he need help? You have an entire offensive line coming back. You have arguably the best left tackle in the league protecting you. You added to an already stacked wide receiver room, and you have a sensation at running back. I mean, maybe a little extra help at tight end. But, I agree with you there. And what's crazy is even though it's another new offensive coordinator for Baker, it's also the most continuity he's ever had in his career with an offensive coordinator, just having a coach there from a season ago. So I don't know. I feel Baker could have – I'm torn in 2 ways. On the one hand, I think Baker could have a career – he already had career numbers last season. I think he can get past those numbers. The only reason he wouldn't, in my opinion, is that if the Bucs running game is just such an incredible monster that he doesn't have to throw it as much, or – some of his completion percentage will come down because it feels like the Bucs are going to go a little more vertical, and that might take away from some stuff, but at the same time, still lead to a successful team.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Last year he was at I think 41 passing touchdowns, 16 picks. So you'd like to see him cut down on those interceptions, but 4,500 passing yards after a season where he had set career highs at 4,044 yards and 28 touchdowns. So. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is those turnovers and cutting down maybe into half, have those 16 interceptions and, stay around that touchdown mark. And you're looking at another really, really good season, another Pro Bowl caliber season where he'd be putting the Bucs in a position to not only make the playoffs and win the division again, but make a deeper run.
Demon Murphy says, just added another chip for Baker's shoulder. Let's embrace it. I can almost guarantee Baker has not seen this PFF list and won't see it unless someone brings it up to him, because he's the same guy that won NFC Offensive Player of the Week. And like a coach told him at practice, he was like, all right, sick. And then like just kept going at practice. Yeah. So Baker gets motivated by a lot of stuff. I don't necessarily know if that will be the case, but appreciate the comment nonetheless, Demon Murphy. Let's talk about Bucky Irving, shall we? Bucky Irving has one of the best rankings amongst the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on this list. He is ranked 6th on this list of 32 running backs. There is only 1, 2, 3, 4 Buccaneers that were ranked inside the top 10. So Bucky at number 6 is considered in very high regard amongst all running backs in the NFL. What was said about him is Irving was sensational as a rookie. He didn't quite have the volume stats of other running backs in this list range, but his efficiency scores were that of a top 10 back. He earned a 90 PFF rushing grade with 62 forced missed tackles and led the NFL with 3.93 yards after contact per attempt among running backs with at least 150 carries. He also posted a 90.2 PFF receiving grade, the second highest mark at the position. I don't really know how much better Bucky Irving can get because it was such an ideal rookie season. I mean, we were at OTAs the other day, Bailey, and the vision of Bucky Irving still seems like it's really on point for this group. The only running backs ahead of him were Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, and Derrick Henry. I'm actually kind of shocked Saquon's not number 1 based on the playoff run he had as well. I'm totally fine with him at number 6. I'm just, more than anything else, I'm just curious of what he will do for a second act, and more specifically, how the Bucs go about balancing that running back room.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. I mean, you look at the group that he's up, like the guys you just mentioned. He's in the top 6 with some of the superstar
the cover
backs
of Madden.
Yeah, cover Madden, a guy and Derrick Henry, who obviously every week is a headline guy. Bijan Robinson was one of the most highly touted running back prospects in years. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs up there too, a first-round pick. And this is a guy who was a 4th-round pick last year. And he comes out, he has a 1,000-yard rushing season. Look at that picture. Look at the helmet coming off.
Ben Bredesen, that's purposely, I mean, we love Bucky, but in all seriousness, this picture is up here because of Ben Bredesen blocking without a helmet. It's badass.
But you look at kind of even who's like immediately behind Bucky, and I know some of this is based on last season and our injuries and all that, and kind of a little bit of projection, I think, going forward. But right behind him is Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Like if you had told me at this time last year that we'd be going into 2025 and Bucky Irving would be ranked higher than Christian McCaffrey, ranked higher than Kyron Williams and guys like that, that's super impressive for what he did as a rookie. And I was kind of curious of your thoughts too here. Obviously, This is a top 32 list. Some teams have multiple guys listed on here. There are some rookies who haven't played it down yet listed on here. Are you surprised Rachaad White's not in the top 32?
I'm slightly surprised. I thought he could have been anywhere from 28 to 32, especially with how important that he is to the passing game specifically. I don't think Rachaad White would be, like, if you were going to do a top 50 running backs, I'd be surprised if he was anywhere past 40, because I think he's still one of the best, or one of the better, I should say, one of the better all-around running backs in the NFL. And Rachaad White's still going to be super, super vital to this team, because I think that's the one thing where Bucky could really use some improvement, because Rachaad White's so good at it, is can Bucky be a third down running back? Because I know that PFF talked about the rankings with his receiving grades as well, but a lot of the passes thrown to Bucky are either screen passes or little swing passes where Rachaad White can like go and legitimately run routes. So I want to see if Bucky can be more of a route runner this year as a running back, but even more importantly, be able to stop the pass rush if somebody's blitzing at him, because he struggled in that playoff game against Washington, specifically with picking up pass blocking. And I know Bucky's a tiny guy, but you want him on the field in some of those crunch time situations.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, I don't know, Rashad, like you mentioned, his skill set as a receiver out of the backfield, and even lining him up sometimes in the slot out wide, but also he's an elite pass protector, and so I just looking at some of the lists. Obviously, some of these guys it's projections on what they're going to do. In the case of obviously
Right.
the two rookie running backs out of Ohio State, there's also Amarion Hampton from North Carolina who's on here, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Just as I got further and further down the list, I'm thinking like, all right, he's probably going to be around this range, and yeah, didn't find him on there. I was a little surprised.
Frederick Sutherland says Bucky has slight room for improvement, getting the bulk of the touches from week 1 as opposed to week 4 or 5 last year. Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, he didn't really take the reins. Sorry, I just immediately thought of Roman Reigns. He didn't necessarily take the Roman Reigns until, a couple of games into the season, where now he's going to be getting it from week 1. So can he hold up? That'll be a little bit of a storyline, but I think, again, as we've spoken about, the depth of this room is good enough where if Bucky even misses a game or two or whatever the case may be, they will be all right. We know the depth is quite all right in the wide receiver room with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, and Emeka Egbuka. When it comes to the wide receivers, they had 2 on this list. Mike Evans, who was ranked at 9. So, once again, 2 of the 4 Buccaneers that were ranked in the top 10. He's at tier 3, ranked 9th. And then doubling up at 18 in tier 4 is Chris Godwin. This is what was said about Mike Evans. Despite missing time with the hamstring injury, the 30-year-old topped 1,000 receiving yards for the 11th consecutive season and earned the second highest receiving grade of his career at 90.2. And what was said about Chris Godwin is Godwin would rank higher if not for the uncertainty surrounding his return from a dislocated ankle suffered in 2024. Before the injury, he was on pace for a potential career year, earning an 85.7 receiving grade. Since 2019, his cumulative WAR of 1.39, wins above replacements is what it stands for, 13th among wide receivers. So with Chris Godwin, I'm all on board with, hey, let's see him get healthy before we anoint him as like a top 5 wide receiver. But I will point out that once again, Chris Godwin was leading the league in receiving yards, or like in the top 2 in receiving yards up until getting injured. So if he can get fully healthy, I have no doubts that he can become, what he was for this team last season if Josh Grizzard can, dial up the right stuff. The players ahead of Mike Evans, who again was at 9. So Terry McLaurin is at 10, right past him. But 8 is Tyreek Hill, 7 Nico Collins, then CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and A.J. Brown ranked at number 1. I don't know how much further Mike could go up the list by any means. I mean, Tyreek Hill, I think it was a little bit more of poor quarterback play, or injured quarterback play, I guess I should say, with him at 8. But I think Chris Godwin could really have a major jump depending on his health status.
Yeah, I think so. I don't really have any qualms, at least at this stage of where we are, with Evans being at 9. I think the only thing I would nitpick there is maybe moving the tier 3 down to starting at 10 and including Evans at the very end of tier 2. Yeah. But yeah, I think Godwin has obviously a lot of room to jump up. He's got to get back and get healthy. But like you said, what he did for this offense and kind of just the way that he drove it last season and was leading among the league leaders at the time of his injury, I think he has certainly a case to get back up there just outside the top 10 by the end of this season.
I'm very curious if we're going to see an appearance by him at all at mandatory minicamp. And I don't just mean like, I'd be surprised if he's actually like running drills and routes and stuff like that, especially in front of the media when he wouldn't even answer questions about, where he is in his rehab and everything like that. But the same way that like Vita Vea and Levante David, came to practice on Tuesday and went out and watched and things of that nature. Because we know as much of a leader as Mike is, and he certainly is, he wears the C every single year on his jersey. Chris Godwin has been the number 1 lead by example guy in that wide receiver room specifically. Other guys go and lead by example. How do you feel about if Godwin isn't ready for week 1? having Jalen McMillan and or Emeka Egbuka step up in that role?
Yeah, I mean, I would feel good about it. I think they have afforded themselves the chance to do whatever they need to do to bring Godwin along and make sure he really is 100% and ready to go. And it's funny, I was kind of having that. I don't remember if I mentioned it to you or not, if it was to Scott on Tuesday. It's just interesting to me when you watch what Abuka's doing out there right now in OTAs. You kind of see him running similar routes and almost filling that Godwin role.
Yeah.
Almost seamlessly. And obviously, he's a rookie, and Chris Godwin is the second best Bucs receiver of all time. He's not going to be Chris Godwin from day one. But as far as starting the season, if you have to start the season without Godwin, I think they have enough at that position, especially after the draft, to be able to make up for it. And I think Todd Bowles kind of referred to that or alluded to that on the podcast on Monday. He was talking about, in a different way, talking about the middle of the season when they've been going on those losing streaks. Mm-hmm. They get a little banged up. Last year they lost Evans and they lost Godwin, and they didn't really have that much depth at receiver. Jalen McMillan was banged up at the time too. Now they've got those guys who they feel like if they are going to lose a top guy for a game or two, they're going to be able to plug and play and still be able to survive.
Yeah, having all those wide receivers, it's gotten to the point where there's been conversations about the Bucs potentially trading Trey Palmer. I know there was a rumor of the Steelers. It doesn't really seem like that's a totally valid rumor, but having all those players gives that possibility. It's definitely a bit of an insurance for the Buccaneers, especially with that Emeka Egbuka first-round pick. And speaking of insurance, there's no one better to work with than Briar Greaves Insurance, the official insurance company of PewterReport.com. If you're a longtime podcast listener, you probably remember the late, great Mark Cook talking about Briar Greaves Insurance. Pewter Report's Scott Reynolds has been a Briar Greaves customer for years, and there simply is not a better insurance company in the Tampa Bay area. Visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com to see for yourself. Briar Greaves Insurance is family-owned, and their main goal is helping people. They want to help people find the right insurance policy for you and your family. Whether it's home or auto, boating insurance, or business insurance, turn to Briar Greaves and find out why their personal touch and customer service sets them apart. The days of waiting on hold to speak with an insurance representative that you don't even know are over. With Briar Greaves Insurance, you'll have a relationship with your agent who can answer your questions and advise you on all of the best policies. As 2 recent hurricanes have shown all of us that live in the Tampa Bay area, there is a cost to living in paradise, and hurricane season, fortunately, is coming back. Briar Greaves can help make sure you have the right hurricane and flood insurance. Make sure you and your home are protected. So visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com today. That's Briar, B-R-I-E-R, Greaves, G-R-I-E-V-E-S, or call their office today at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166, and tell them that Pewter Report sent you. Before we get back into this list, want to remind everybody we have a huge, gigantic show coming up on Monday, June the 9th, as Bucs general manager Jason Light will be joining the show on Monday at 4 o'clock. We're going to have him for an entire hour, the same way that we did with Todd Bowles last Monday, same way that we did with Zion McCollum and some other guests that we had. So make sure you get those super chats ready. There were some great questions from the commenters for Todd Bowles, things that went viral, things that got us on ESPN and stuff like that. So if you have a question for Jason Light, put it in the chat. We'll see if we can get to it. But very excited to have him on. And before that, on Friday, we're going to have another Pewter Insider. Can the Bucs win a Super Bowl with Todd Bowles? That will be at 1:30. That is for Pewter Platinum and Premier members. So we appreciate all of you that are Pewter and Platinum Premier members. So a little scheduling for you guys. Jason Light on Monday. And then, of course, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week, all at 4 o'clock, we'll be recapping the mandatory minicamp because each day is open to the media. All right, let's keep this show rocking and rolling. We're going to talk about tight end Cade Otton, who was ranked 20th on this list. On Achilles' heel is drops. He has the third most, 11, at the position across the past 2 years. His 63.1 PFF receiving grade in 2024 was a career high and also marked the first time he generated more than 1 yard per route run. If he can hang on to the ball, also 3 fumbles the past 2 years, Otten has the skills to rise on the list. So it's very interesting because when Trevor was on the Kay Adams show up in Adams not too long ago, he had the Bucs as the number 1 skill position team in the league. So it didn't include quarterback. It just meant running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. I think we're all in agreement, not that he's bad, but if there was a weakness of the skill position group, it has to be the tight end position. So a couple guys in the top 5 for tight end: George Kittle, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, and Sam Laporta. A couple players in front of Cade Otton. Kyle Pitts at 19. That's insane. Tucker Kraft, who I'm a big fan of because he is hilarious. Jake Ferguson, Hunter Henry, and David Njoku. I'm putting some stock into Cade Otton for this upcoming season, Bailey. Part of it is because it is a contract year. Part of it is I think he's going to really show his value this year as just a guy that does a little bit of everything for this team. He doesn't need to be the focal point. I mean, he's not going to be the focal point when you have Mike and Chris and Bucky and all of these guys. But last season, when everybody was hurt except for Cade Otton, it was Cade Otton that stepped up. And he was a guy that went from bare hands. Now he wears gloves again. We'll see how he starts this season. But as long as he can hold on to the football, I think he can make a 10 number jump from 20 to 10, depending on what's going on in a game. But his versatility, his Iron Man streak, everything about him, I think is more valuable to the Bucs than a lot of people recognize.
Yeah, I think based on what we saw during that stretch when there were all the injuries last year and Otton did what he did, I think there's certainly the potential for him to make a huge leap this season. And the thing that's interesting to me about those drop numbers, and I'm curious because when I don't know, this is just thinking back, it's like I wouldn't have thought that, like those numbers that are attached to him, 11 drops over the last 2 seasons. Like I don't look at him and think like, oh, he drops the ball a lot. Like, I'm curious to see what goes down for him as a drop, because I feel like he, more than anyone, obviously part of it comes with the territory of being a tight end, but I don't know how many times I've seen Cade Otton just get lit up. He just gets in like over the middle of the field or down the field. It just seems like he's always on the wrong end of massive hits from safety. So I don't know if some of those are causing those drops and if those are being counted. But yeah, I think what we saw from Cade Otton last year was a huge, huge leap forward from what he was. I think he kind of went from being a little pedestrian, a little like he's an average tight end to I think I would call him above average at this point. And I know 20 is probably doesn't really lend itself to the above average label, but I think he could be anywhere between 16 and 20 on this list, honestly.
Yeah, I think he got knocked a little bit for his drops because I could be wrong, but like I don't really recall many drops, and I'm putting this in quotations for those listening on audio, drops that were like kind of easy ones. I think he kind of got dinged for not always making the toughest catch, like in traffic or with the defender like hot on his tail, where Mike's going to make the catch or Chris is going to make the catch. But when there was a little bit of adversity with the defender on him, or maybe it was a tight window, that's where he had the drops. And I think that's where there's kind of some negativity about him. But yeah, I would put him as slightly above average right now with the potential to be, again, like he's never going to be mistaken for Kittle or Bowers or anything like that. But that doesn't, the Bucs don't need that. I mean, sure, they'll take it, but they don't need that with the group that they have. The number 1 ranked player for the Bucs at any position was Tristan Wirfs at number 2 at offensive tackle. And then Luke Gedeke also had a pretty solid ranking. He was over at 29. So cool to see both Bucs starting offensive tackles make it on the list. Remember, there's 32 teams, 2 starters. So out of 64, I believe that math is right, the Bucs have 2 within the top 30. So I thought that was really cool to see. The write-up on Wirfs is there has been no better pass blocking offensive tackle in the NFL in recent years than Wirfs. Not only did he permit 0 sacks in 2024, but he has also He also allowed pressure on just 1.9% of pass plays, the best rate among all offensive tackles. The gap between Wirfs and the second place left tackle in pressure rate allowed is 1 percentage point, is the equivalent of the gap between the second and sixth ranked left tackles. The write-up on Gedeke, let me see if I can find the picture of him, because we have a lot of photos in here. The write-up on Gedeke, there's the picture of him, along with Cody Mauch, is the former second-round pick endured a rough rookie season in 2022, but made one of the biggest improvements in the NFL when he ranked 27th among all offensive tackles with a 73.4 PFF overall grade in 2023. Gedeke has been nothing if not consistent since then, as he replicated his performance in 2024 with a 74.2 PFF overall grade, which once again ranked 27th at the position. The 3.2 position rate he allowed was the best clip of his career by a significant margin. The only player in front of Tristan Wirfs was Jordan Mailata from the Eagles, who the Bucs will play once again this season. I mean, there's not really going to be an argument if you want to put Tristan 1, 2, 3, or 4. He's at the top of the list. I think it's great to see Gedeke. Really, what I want to know is, do the Bucs have the best offensive tackle duo in the league? It feels like maybe it's just the Eagles with Mailata and Lane Johnson, but besides that, it's got to be Wirfs and Gedeke.
Yeah, I think they've got to definitely be up there, and I think you're almost splitting hairs a little bit when you've got 1 and 2 Mailata and Wirfs. I think you're not going to get too many arguments one way or the other. However, you lay those out, it's kind of similar. I think a couple of years ago, it was either Wirfs or Lane Johnson. But I think it's the duo of Wirfs and Gedeke. It has to be up there, and I think it's only going to rise even higher after this. I think you're looking at this list next year. I think Gedeke is going to be a guy who maybe is looked at in the top 20, top 15. He has just been on that kind of trajectory over the last couple of years, and I think he's only getting better. So the Bucs are in a really good spot. Obviously, they locked up Tristan Wirfs to a new contract last offseason, and I think Gedeke's will be coming soon enough. So they're in a really good spot bookending their offensive line with those two.
How would you rank? So there's pretty much 3 Bucs right now that are eligible for an extension from the same draft class. Gedeke, McCollum, Cade Otton. How would you rank them in terms of like the first person you would extend down to the third?
I think I'd go Gedeke, then Zion, McCollum, and then Cade Otton. I think just the finding another really, really solid right tackle isn't the easiest thing in the world. I think the Bucs, I don't want to say they got lucky, but if you think about it, in 2019, they had DeMar Dotson, and he was kind of toward the end of his career. And then 2020, they're able to draft Tristan Wirfs, and he steps right in at right tackle, and they go to the Super Bowl. If you're not able to lock up Gedeke for whatever reason, and he moves on somewhere else, there's no guarantee that whoever you pick up and plug into that spot is going to be able to hold up that same level of play or even improve upon it. So I would go with him first. Zion, I think Zion's a close second, but I think when you look at the fact that they just drafted Benjamin Morrison, every year it seems like they're going to probably want to flood that cornerback room a little bit more. If they didn't lock him up and had to move on at some point, you'd feel probably better about throwing a lot of darts at the dartboard in the cornerback room. And then with Otton, I would like to see Otton stick around, but it's one of those things where you could improve upon that position, and depending on what the money is, like you could, in the first or second round, maybe spend one of those premium picks on a tight end and maybe get a little bit more for less money.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have the same order: Gedeke, McCollum, and Cade Otton. The other thing I want to know, and this is more geared towards Tristan Wirfs specifically because he's more of a candidate to win it, but there's the new Protector of the Year award going to the best offensive lineman. And what I want to know and what I hope for is, like, will they show highlights of offensive linemen each week? Like, you have NFC and AFC Offensive Player of the Week. When it comes down to the MVP rankings, it's always quarterbacks, but you could be like, hey, he threw for 400 yards this week, and wow, he's already got 35 touchdowns through X amount of games. I don't know who has to break it down, the NFL, PFF, whoever. If there's a way to kind of be like, hey, this offensive lineman had a really good week, like build a highlight tape for some of these guys, because the problem with offensive linemen is it's such a close inner circle. Like, Tristan Wirfs is in the inner circle of well-known offensive linemen, but there are so many other guys, and I think Gedeke is a good example of the rest of the league doesn't know about Luke Gedeke, but he can have a week where he has an insane week, a couple of pancakes, doesn't allow a pass rush by, I don't know, Aiden Hutchinson or one of the Bosa's or whatever the case may be, and he's not getting the shine because everyone goes, oh, well, we know Lane Johnson, we know Jordan Mailata, we know Trent Williams, let's give one of them the award. So it's just more of a thought out loud, but I don't know. I hope there's a way to try to inform everybody about a lot more of the offensive linemen that could be potential candidates and not just, well, everybody knows this guy, so let's give him the award.
Yeah, I think it's gotten better, obviously, with PFF and maybe some other sites that go and dive into the tape and are able to try to quantify a little bit more of what offensive linemen do. Obviously, it's still a pretty new thing and it's imperfect, but
yeah,
I think that helps. And it's just hard because there's not really concrete stats for an offensive lineman. And again, I don't know who it would be up to, but I almost would like to see, like you said, like the offensive player of the week or the whatever. They have like the FedEx air and ground players of the week. I'd almost like to see a protector of the week each week. And then that way, when you get to the end of the season, if you're trying to make a tough call on who you give the award to, it's like, well, Mailata won it 6 weeks out of the season. He's obviously, going to have the better overall body of work. Like I would almost
I got it. So of course the NFL will take money any way they can. So get another advertiser. Maybe it's Waffle House. Maybe it's IHOP. The pancake of the week. Tristan Wirfs with the pancake of the week. Luke Gedeke with the pancake of the week.
I like it.
Brought to you by IHOP or whatever, whatever establishment you want to do it from. But that just solved that. So
perfect. It would work. Yeah. I like it.
Next up, we're gonna kind of mix together the guards in the center with Cody Mauch and Graham Barton. So Cody Mauch was ranked 22nd among guards. Ben Bredesen was not ranked there, and Graham Barton was ranked 21st. So 2 out of 3 of the interior offensive line gets on the list, which I think is good to see. I'm not gonna sit here and really make a big deal about where Cody Mauch and Graham Barton are compared to 25 other teams interior offensive line where not everybody knows everyone. But I guess really what I want to say is how excited I am for the growth of Graham Barton and the continuous growth of Cody Mauch. Because I really think Graham Barton, I mean, we spoke to him a week ago when he was up at the podium. This guy just understands like how to be professional, how to get everything under wraps. And I think his football IQ, what he learned, what he worked on this offseason, he might have the biggest jump on the Bucs offensive line more than anyone else.
Yeah, when he was drafted last year, I think quite a few of us. I know I did. I said it a couple times. Scott said it. A lot of people have said it. He has Pro Bowl potential, just with his kind of just his skill set, and I think like you said, his football IQ, his work ethic, all of that. He has the potential to rise up there and be one of the elite centers in the league. And when you look at even what he talked about last week, because something that he's done this offseason, he said he went back and watched his first practice from OTAs last year and kind of just saw how things looked back then and kind of almost reminded himself how much he's grown, over the past year or so. And I think the arrow is obviously pointing up for him. And I think in these rankings, I'm very happy to see. I know it's still only 22nd, but I'm happy to see Mauch get the recognition for what he did last year, because I think he came, extremely long way. He improved leaps and bounds, and again, another guy whose stock is rising.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think those two guys are really the glue of this offensive line. That you got some stars in there. Bredesen was important to re-sign. I'm even excited about Elijah Klein for the preseason, what he'll be able to do if he's available. We're going to move to the defensive side, starting with defensive tackles. So Vita Vea was ranked at 11th. Kalijah Kancey, surprisingly, was not on this list. I'm very curious how much missing the beginning of the season hurt Kalijah Kancey's chances to make this list, because he led the Buccaneers in sacks last season, despite missing really the first month. We all know how great Vita Vea can be. The write-up on him is that the Buccaneers' big man is In the middle, might not have the stats of other top defensive tackles, but his presence alone is that of a top 12 interior defender. It goes on to say his 65.3 PFF run defensive grade in 2024 was near a career low, and why he isn't higher on the list, but he recorded a 72.0 plus PFF pass rush grade for the 7th straight season. Some guys in front of him: Christian Wilkins, Jeffrey Simmons, DeForest Buckner, Derek Brown, Leonard Williams, and Jalen Carter. It's tough to put an aging Vita Vea towards the top 5 when there's a lot of young defensive tackles. And when I say aging, I just mean he's a little bit older. He's not, he can still get a lot done. I think I'm just more shocked, Bailey, that Kalijah Kancey just isn't on this list at all.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest, like if we're looking at the collection of Bucs ranked at each position, I think it's the biggest oversight or the biggest miss on all of these lists. I don't know. You said at the beginning of the season that him missing that, I think it almost highlights the fact that he was still be able to come back and just pick up, right where he left off and get 7.5 sacks, lead the team. I think probably what went into this is on a pretty consistent basis. I think PFF is really low in terms of grading on Kancey's run defense. So I think that's where his biggest knock is, especially from a PFF lens. But I don't see how in any case he's not in the top 32 among interior defensive linemen.
Another player that I think really has the chance to boost his number the following year is Yaya Diaby. He's the only edge rusher of the Bucs on this list. He's at 24. Again, this has nothing to do with the list. It's more of just it's not a make or break year. Like if Yaya has the same stats he did from last season, he's not going to be cut or anything like that. But I truly think it's a make or break year for Yaya in the terms of it's his 3rd year. He's got to figure out the NFL by now. If he doesn't get close to double-digit sacks, I think we could just chalk it up to he probably just won't be that guy. And he's a solid second string outside linebacker, whatever the case may be. But I think it's really important for Yaya, if he wants to make that jump, he's got to get at least 10 sacks this season to be held in higher regard.
I think so. And I think what's interesting about his ranking here is, like, in the write-up, it was talking about how he did improve in a lot of categories last year. We've talked about it plenty too, is that, the only thing that really didn't get better and got worse last year were his actual sack total. Everything else, pressure rate, pass rush win rate, all that stuff. He in total pressures, I think we're up in the 40s, and he was like top 5 or 6. So he was doing everything right last year. He just wasn't getting to the quarterback. And obviously that's the big thing that will get you paid. It will get you notoriety, respect, all that. So if he stays consistent on all those other numbers and gets up to that 10 sack mark this year, I think you're looking next year at him being maybe in the top 15, top 16, 17.
And when you get paid, you want to use your money the right way. There's nobody better to work with than Muni Financial.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude, congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That is right. Muni Financial has proudly been serving clients across the country since 1980. They can help you with a number of things like brokerage services, legacy and retirement planning, insurance services, annuities, sales and trading, and so much more. They have offices in the Tampa area, Colorado, and all across the continental United States. You could be in Oklahoma. You can be in Texas, Washington, D.C., Washington State, the Northeast, the Southwest, all over, maybe even in I don't know, we mentioned enough states. But anyway, shout out to Muni Financial. See how they can help you. Give them a call. Get a free consultation over at Muni Financial. I always go overboard with the number of states and stuff like that. So, sometimes you just got to cut yourself off. So we spoke about the edge rushers. Now we're going to talk about inside linebacker Levante David, also known as LVD, the future Bucs Ring of Honor member, and hopefully, fingers crossed, a future Hall of Famer as well. The write-up on Lavonte is David is another seasoned linebacker at the tail end of his career who continues to excel in the modern NFL. While his 67.9 PFF overall grade in 2024 was his lowest since 2016, he remains one of the most consistent run stoppers at the position, having posted a 70-plus PFF run defense grade in 8 consecutive seasons. I have no issue with Lavonte at 22. I actually would have put him ahead of Demario Davis, who's one above at 21. It's tough with Lavonte's age to be like, he's a top 5 inside linebacker. He's still extremely important to this team. There's no doubt about it. His instincts are still off the charts. He's so important. But what I want to know how you think about this, Bailey. I'm fine with preserving Lavonte a little bit more by, having him play first and second down, but then maybe taking him off on third down. Or maybe because of how these linebackers have looked so far, giving him a couple plays off and then bring him back in. Is there any validity to that, or is it you just got to let Lavonte be Lavonte?
I think there is, and I think obviously it's also about managing your personnel and knowing what Lavonte is okay with. I don't think you obviously want to upset one of your top leaders and your captains and all that. But if you sit him down, you have a conversation honestly with him and say, hey, listen, like we're trying to make sure that you can stay healthy. We're trying to make the most and get the most out of you as your playing days near its end. Maybe that does make sense. And I know, it's kind of funny when you think about it. Obviously, Servassier is the other guy who's going to be starting. So if you're taking Lavonte off the field, you're having Servassier out there. Are you putting in Anthony Walker Jr. or are you, Deion Jones, obviously had the interception OTAs earlier this week. Is he a guy that you're going to, want to count on in coverage? So it does depend, I think, on how Lavonte would take it and how kind of Todd Bowles would want to deploy his personnel. Like you said, like him being 22nd, I don't think there's anything you can really argue about that. It is just kind of startling to see, I think, after all those years of him being a top 10 guy, to see him as low as 22 and to see tier 5 attached to his name. That something feels off about tier 5.
Yeah, it's dirty. It's nasty.
It doesn't feel right. But obviously, like you said, still extremely important and is still playing at a really high level, especially against the run.
Do you believe this is Lavonte's last season, or could he get into a situation where, let's just say the Bucs win the Super Bowl, and he's like, all right, now I got 2 Super Bowl rings. Now I can pad my Hall of Fame stat sheet by being like, oh, I played 2 extra seasons, racked up 100 tackles again per season, wherever the case may be. I think saying, because remember, it was Frank Gore for the longest time. It was like, oh my God, he's the oldest running back to ever play, and he's going to end up with 3rd all time in rushing yards. But it was always like, well, he was never the best running back in the league, wherever the case may be. If Lavonte has 2 rings and plays until he's 37 and hopefully plays at a high rate, it's going to be a much better case for him for the Hall of Fame.
I think there's something to that. I mean, I think the big I think there is getting that 2nd Super Bowl ring.
Yeah.
And I think the Bucs are in a good position to do that over the next year or 2 or 3. It just kind of depends, obviously, on how his body's feeling and the level that he's still playing at. I think, as it is right now, it's such a tough thing with him and the whole Hall of Fame case because stat-wise and all of that, I think he lives up to everything. And he's done some things that no other linebacker in the NFL has done, or only 2 or 3 have ever done. You're seeing it every week at this point.
Yeah,
those stats come out, and obviously there's always the comparison to his own guy in the draft class, Luke Kuechly, who was obviously the Player of the Year, had all those accolades, but had a much shorter career. He's going to get in. Lavonte's had all these extra years to build up his resume. Has won a Super Bowl, but he just doesn't, for whatever reason, have those Pro Bowls or All Pros. And that's what's going to be used against them. So the whole thing kind of just bothers me because I think there's plenty of reason to reward him for that longevity. What is this? His 13th season, I think.
13 or
14.
Yeah.
And yeah, say he plays and this is his last year. I think his resume as it is, he should have a strong enough case. Whether or not that, it pays off, I don't know. But I think he's already, the longevity he's played to already is impressive enough as it is. And like you said, if he can go any further, it's going to only strengthen it.
Yeah, totally agree there. Last two we'll talk about is corners and safeties. We'll try not to make a scene here. Jamel Dean over at 17. Zion McCollum not on the list. And then Antoine Winfield Jr., the last of the single-digit rankings, over at 4. I would actually move Jamel Dean further back. Like, I would probably put him in the 20s just based off of the overall injury history that he's had and his lack of turnovers. I think he's a good corner. He should be in the top 32, but I would have had him somewhere in the 20s. Winfield, I'm sure a lot of this is just banking on, what he did 2 seasons ago. And that's totally fine because even in a down year, he still found a way to get a defensive score and make plays here and there. So I'm really just more excited about a healthy Antoine Winfield Jr. paired with Tyke Smith at safety, paired with, now Benjamin Morrison and Jacob Parrish. Just seems like a fresher defensive back room overall.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Jamel Dean, I'm fine with him at 17, honestly. I think he obviously, the big thing is he doesn't take the ball away and he can't stay healthy for a full 17. But it almost looks like in these rankings, they're kind of just taking his body of work when he is on the field. And when he is on the field, he's a very, very solid, consistent corner. I know, his coverage grades and kind of everything outside of, actually getting his hands around the football. He knocks the football away sometimes, but not getting the interceptions hurts. But I think as far as everything else, he does it all really well. Antoine, again, I have no issue with because of the injury last year. I think last season, I don't remember for sure, but he must have been top 1 or 2 after that all-pro season. And when you look at this list, Kyle Hamilton's number 1, Xavier McKinney's number 2, Jesse Bates is number 3. And so coming off of an injury and a down season because of the injury, you can't put Antoine above any of those guys, but he's still right there with him.
Yeah, exactly. He's still with the best of the best. He's just got to stay healthy and he'll be fine. Mm-hmm. You mentioned putting in the work before. I love putting in work on the food and drinks over at Walk-Ons.
What an amazing comeback, Coach.
You're not kidding. I mean, we did lose the game badly, but coming to Walk-Ons afterward, the team got a much-needed win off the field.
Walk-Ons for the win.
Shout out to Walk-Ons. There are 3 in the Tampa Bay area, 1 over in Lakeland, 1 in Wesley Chapel, and another in Midtown Tampa, pretty close to Raymond James Stadium and also over by where I live. But they have happy hour each day with fantastic deals for food and drinks. So make sure you check out Walk-Ons. Also, spend Father's Day next Sunday over at Walk-Ons as well, watching sports, all different stuff. They got tons and tons of TVs and great food and drinks as well. So shout out to our friends over at Walk-Ons. Also want to give a shout out to our Pewter Platinum and Premier members. So thank you to Scott Federico, Rachel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Hezo 813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zap Brannigan, RP89, Eric McMillan, Connor for Reals, Kevin Thomas, Mario Thomas, Zach Jarvis, and Leighton Carter. Thank you all so much for your support of PewterReport.com. We really appreciate you. One last reminder, we got the Pewter Insider on Friday for Pewter Platinum and Premier members. Can the Bucs win a Super Bowl with Todd Bowles? And then on Monday, Jason Light, the Bucs general manager, joins the show for an entire hour. We'll have that Monday at 4 p.m., followed by shows on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, recapping Bucs mandatory minicamp. So a lot of great stuff coming up. We thank everyone for your support. If you're not already doing so, please make sure you're following us on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video, whether you agree or disagree with some of the rankings that we talked about today. But that's going to do it for us on today's show. For Bailey Adams, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. Have a fantastic weekend if we don't see you until next show, and we'll see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.